Welcome everybody, I'm James. I'm an architect and I also teach iPad drawing on YouTube through self-guided courses and in my live draw-along workshops. But today I want to show you a new way of urban sketching that I've been developing on my iPad, one that solves the number one problem I've always had with urban sketching, namely running out of time, never getting to the color part, which is the most important part because more than drawing or composition, it's color that captures the fleeting conditions of light and atmosphere that I'm trying to capture in the first place. And just so you know, the Procreate files I'll be using today are linked below, so you'll be able to download them onto your iPad, study the layers, and replay the sketches stroke by stroke. So let's begin. Here's a photo I took of an amazing scene I came across this summer, and here's the urban sketch I made of that scene. But instead of sketching it in the traditional way, I began by breaking the view down into simplified blocks of color and contrast, reducing everything to a few bold shapes of color, like this urban sketch I did when I was first developing this technique, or this portrait I did of a family friend during a trip to Paris. Visualizing my compositions this way helps me capture the fleeting quality of light first, then leaves plenty of time at the end to add more and more detail until I just can't sit in one place anymore. Let's see how this translated to this sketch. Let me now walk you through the original Procreate sketch I've shared with you below so you can see how these techniques actually worked in the moment, with the sun beating down and with me feeling really self-conscious as I always do when I sit and sketch in public, and how you might apply them in your own work. And I'll tap here on the Actions menu and go into Video, and you'll be able to do this yourself because you've got this Procreate file in the description below, and you can load it onto your iPad as well and recreate what I'm about to do. So I'll tap time-lapse replay, and now I'll use my finger to stop it and start it. And here is that early and very crude composition. I went into a little bit more detail on the chairs and things, but it didn't take very long. Here's a very crude version of that hillside, and that was changed when the colors happened. And then here come the large color areas. We've got the street, the ocean, the hillside itself, which was darker in my version. There's the foreground building, there's the sky, the beginning of some of these angled walls that are creating moments of interest. I went ahead and did the gradient right in the beginning, and also the ocean got its textural sparkle. Now, instead of waiting for all the chairs and things to go in, I wanted to capture that shadow right away. So I just blocked in this large shadow shape and then turned it into multiply mode after I put in the color. So I was composing with the color and then putting it into multiply blend mode. And it's funny, I got to this point in this drawing, I remember, and I became very discouraged. I thought, this will take forever. You can see my vine crawling up the building. And I just kept pushing myself. Here is the vegetation that's helping to define edges beyond in the hillside, and it's a different color and a little bit more subdued. And I would check back to my pencil drawing all the time to make sure I was on target. And here come the chairs, and instead of a solid block, I was basically drawing more individual chairs, but still very, very crude, and lots of this negative space inside them. Then a different kind of table. I just threw those tables on very quickly, and again, it's all working with that shadow. So in a sense, I have my urban sketch complete at this point, but I was only 14 minutes into this sketch when I got to this point. So this is the great power of this technique, that you can capture this kind of atmosphere in just 14 minutes. So here a second shadow has been laid in just specifically to pick up these chair legs and to create that kind of energy and layering of the distance using the chair legs. And the next step was some of these details. I didn't start with the big black windows, but I started with the window trim to get that blue in. And then I put the darker areas, the darker recesses as you look back in. And at this point, really the sense of play just takes over. Specific structures I was looking at, they evoke shadows, they evoke sun hitting objects and being obscured by other objects in the foreground. And now experimenting with technique for making some of these lighter walls. I was actually using the flat brush with a semi-opaque white, but that was not very satisfactory to me, so I started to go back to a simpler idea of just large squares and rectangles of white. And you can see I'm starting to put in some of the people here. There are the stairs, which are really giving it that moment of focus all the way back in the distance. And you can see me trying them and not being happy and then starting again. And you'll see all this in the video replay when you use this. And now here, in addition to the shade that some of these walls are cast into, there are also some shadows cast by this sun. And that has a very effective way of adding more detail to the distance. And so here's that menu board over here and the writing on top of it. And playing with the intensity of the shadow, I've just scale the shadow back from a blue to try and get a more realistic effect. And there were also some moments of the foliage that went to this brown color. It created a nice link across to the brown chairs. At any point during your sketch, you can go to the Actions menu, then tap on Copy Canvas, then open your Layers menu and add that copy to the top of your layer stack. And by then activating Multiply Blend mode inside that layer, you will be able to see what it would be like to make your image much darker and more saturated. And you may even want to keep that darker version as your final sketch. And you can see I'm not totally happy with the color that I've made the shade color of the hillside, constantly playing with that. And I'm even putting some line work back into the drawing. I've got my silkscreen version, but there's always an element of play, and you can see I'm only about a half an hour into this drawing when I'm just playing with what if there was a little bit of more line detail back in there to help pick things out, to pick out details and add more interest. We have now entered the final phase where I'm really trying to adjust that color. Now I'm adding some texture, not just the brush texture, but actual texture of line drawing to this street. And there you have the finished drawing. And this is what I'm trying to preach to people today, is the amazing power that this selection tool drawing technique has for freeing you up from the kind of judgments we all make about our drawing abilities, so that what becomes the most important part is not your ability to draw, but just the sheer joy of observing a moment in time, so that not only do you become a better urban sketcher, but you just become a better designer and a person who pays deeper attention to the everyday moments of life that bring us joy. Don't forget to grab the free download link below. And if you'd like to learn more about my self-guided courses or join me in a live draw-along workshop, you'll find those links in the description too. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next sketching retreat.